Hey, it's Mike, and it's Old Religion Dystopia, Knowing versus Believing. Um, yeah, we got uh, a guest today, and it's Mark Zackey. And Mark has been doing some research on a very interesting topic, and that is the skunk apes, or some people call it skunk man, or Bigfoot down south. He's been doing research in Florida. He's got you can find him on Facebook. You can find him on YouTube. He's got a YouTube channel called Reality. It's got cryptoreality.us, which is his website. And hey, Mark, are you still doing the radio show?
Well, we do. First of all, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it. And I did want to actually apologize for the confusion last week. I am so slammed that I actually today was supposed to do another show with a different host, and I got on Skype, and I saw that you called, and I thought, oh my God, I let this guy down. You know what I mean? So I got in touch with you, and here we are. I appreciate your gracious attitude in light of my brain fart.
Oh, that's okay. I'm not that I am not that important, so it's okay, man. You got your life to live, and I understand it happens.
Yeah, either way, man, I appreciate the understanding attitude, really.
Yeah, no problem, man. But do you still have the radio show?
I do a couple different shows. Regularly, we do crypto reality members interviews. I also do crypto reality interviews outside of our membership on the membership website, cryptoreality.us. And then I do a show with Dr. William Lester. He's a doctor of anthropology, and that show is called Agenda Earth. All of that has been put on hold because we're in the process of making a film for Amazon for release to the public. Most of our research is unavailable to the public because, as you know, or maybe you don't, I'm sure you do, there's no funding for the type of research that we engage in. So we have to provide our own funding, and we do that by way of a membership support contribution website. So they get first crack at all of our field evidence and field research films, and in turn help us to fund our research. So that's how that works. But I've been interviewing people for, my first eyewitness interview, I was 15. So I had a show on KGRA in 2011, which was it was Crypto Reality, actually. That Crypto Reality has been around in one way or another since 2005.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? You've
had
quite a few interviews and etc. So, and you're a musician. What do you play?
I'm a musician. Yeah, I play. I've been playing guitar since I was about 12, but I started playing electric and writing my own material about 20 years ago. So I dabble in the heavy stuff. We have, we play a lot of different material. My band's called Ad Bellum.
Ad Bellum, okay. Is the music on your videos, is that from you?
A lot of it is, yeah. It depends on what the new stuff on YouTube. No, because everything. I was having some real serious problems on YouTube with people taking the music I wrote and copywriting it, and then in turn filing copyright violations on my videos that have had it on it for I don't even know how, since I wrote it. And so then they were saying I wasn't allowed to use the music that I in fact wrote. So that was actually one of the main reasons why we pulled our information from YouTube. It just began to be just a real hassle,
It's interesting. I wonder if that's what I will face too, because with my YouTube channel, I'm using just my own art. I figured, you know what? There's so much imagery out there and all that. I might as well just use the paintings and drawings I've done over the years, and I put them on there. So we'll find out if someone hijacks them, steals them, or copyrights them.
Well, I mean, the internet is funny like that. It's I see my images in still frames of the Bigfoot species that we've, shot in the field and while researching and our artwork and all that stuff all over the internet. You know what I mean? And so we started to actually put our little watermarks on it. So, I mean, I don't mind if people use it. I would like it to be identified, as to who actually produced it. You know what I mean? But the music thing, that's where I draw the line. I'm a musician and I'm a songwriter, and I also write symphonies in Logic Pro and copyright violations like that, where someone actually has the gall to take something that I wrote and then copyright it and file a copyright dispute against me, the owner of it. I have absolutely no tolerance for that kind of stuff. So that was the end of that,
Yeah, well, I can imagine. It's just, well, was a musician. I got nailed with MS 7 years ago. So last time I played out, it felt like I had a hangover. I didn't even drink. So, anyways, the music. I did a little bit with acoustic guitar towards the end. I just sent to you a new YouTube channel and some of my art.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So, but I'm doing a series too right now. The new show, the old show that I had, Mark, was called Nothing But the Truth, and did over 1,000 recordings and interviews and everything. So, but I wanted to go in a different direction, so I started a new show called Old Religion Dystopia, and I want to talk about different things than what I've been talking about, which was I talked a lot about the power structure of this world, the Jesuits, Zionists, religion, that kind of stuff. So I just want to go a different direction. So with my journey,
I'm an old student of Tessarian, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm like a big Michael Tessarian student here, man. So I studied semiotics and symbolism for about 5 years.
That's cool. I just had an interview with a guy named Jose Barrera, and we're going to do a series about just that, about how the use of symbolism, but it's, the Freemasonic symbolism, the Jesuitical, and, well, Hebraic or Jewish symbolism is in our lives, and how they use it to mind control us, man.
That's a very fascinating subject to me.
Yeah. So
it's applicable in all fields. It's applicable in my subject matter that we'll be getting into today.
And robot. Skype because robot looking for a friend. Oh gosh. Okay. Anyways, the other thing is, I'm a musician too. Or I wrote a lot of songs myself. I was primarily a bass player, and but I'm doing a series on the hardcore punk scene in the '80s, and the hardcore punk scene, its influence. So if you check it out, if you remember, you might find it interesting.
Are you going to go British, or are you going Washington Square?
Right now, we're dealing with D.C. Well, I'm from Toledo. I'm from a suburb of Toledo called Sylvania. I live right on the Michigan border.
Okay.
And so in the '80s, there was a hardcore scene.
You're talking about like Baltimore and.
Well, right now, my last interview was with Stephen Blush, and he wrote a book and did a documentary on the hardcore scene, the American hardcore, and we will touch the British part of it too. But the American hardcore scene in the '80s, there was the West Coast scene, and then there was the East Coast scene, and then there was basically the Midwest or the Great Lakes region scene, which is Michigan, Detroit, Chicago, Toledo, Cleveland area. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, man.
Necros and all that. I interviewed Todd Swall from the Necros, and it's cool. So, anyways, now that we broke some of the ice, let's get to you. Unless you want to break some ice more, man, I'm more willing to break the ice some more, man. I'm a fellow musician. I always love talking about music.
I can shoot it about gear and musicians and songs and all that stuff for hours, man. So we better get to the subject matter.
Well, the one question that will lead into the subject matter is that here's a dude. You're in a band, right? And you're doing this stuff. You're doing this Skunk Man research and have a website and all that. How do the bandmates look at it? How do they treat you, man? You think you're nuts, or are they on board with you? What?
I think most people, quote unquote, normal people. I think most people that have, the status quo consciousness, the conditioned consciousness would think that I'm crazy, but most of them have nothing to say once they review our work, and that's been the difference. In the beginning, we didn't have much, and it took time, but like everything else, man, it's a process, and I always viewed researching in the field where I live here in South Florida as an impossibility. I just didn't believe it was possible. I didn't think they were here. I grew up here. So I was skeptical from the beginning about whether any of what we do now was even possible. And I had a lot of hypotheses and a few theories, but I never was willing to put any time into it to go into the field. And I think that that's most people, So my bandmates, they see what we're doing, and so they're freaked out. I mean, essentially what we do freaks people out. It'd be one thing if we couldn't show you anything, but that's not the case. And so they're kind of awestruck by it, and my family's the same way. I think they avoid the subject. I think most people avoid the subject, and I think there's a very good reason for that. And I always was fascinated with it, so for it to come up in a conversation where I was present, I would jump in, you know what I mean? But I grew up around it, and, from the time we moved to Florida, I'm originally from Youngstown, Ohio, but we moved here in like late 79, 80. I was exposed to the reality that these things are real, and it's just kind of evolved from there. Obviously, it wasn't my entire existence until, really about 3 years ago. And it started with my own encounter. I mean, it really started with my son's encounter in Myakka State Park in 2012. But my own encounter was the driving force behind who I am today and what I do. And I take it very seriously. And when you see one, you can't have anything but serious thought about what you've seen. It's a very serious thing to have happen. It altered my consciousness. It changed everything I thought about the natural world, and it forced me to reconsider a lot of the beliefs that I had about our government. It was so significant what happened to me that I questioned everything, and that was the beginning of it, man. I was turning over every stone I could get my hands on to try to explain what I had just witnessed, and even from a Bigfoot eyewitness standpoint, what I saw was nothing like what a lot of people describe. So.
Interesting. Well, first of all, when you say our government, it's probably after 9/11, everything that's happened. One should come to the realization it's their government, not our government.
Yeah, I get you.
And there's not at this point. Well, it's just like what I just did a show last week with MK Davis, and do you know him? In his YouTube channel?
I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
Yeah, he diagnosed a lot of the Patty film and all that kind of stuff, and there's an opportunity for me to introduce Dustin, which you were on his show.
Dustin's a great guy, man.
Yeah, for me to introduce him to MK Davis, so I had him on as well. And at the beginning of the show, I read a couple of quotes, one from Winston Churchill and the other one from William Casey, that used to be the director of the CIA. And he says, basically paraphrasing, he says, "We know we've done our job, or we know when our job is completed when everything Americans believe is a lie." Come right out of his mouth. And if you look at it and you look at the progress, what's been going on since World War II, if not before that, actually, if you look at the rags before, but it's they're never going to tell you the truth about anything. It's in order to maintain control and power, they just can't talk to people about the truth. And if this is real, I'm see my show is called Knowing versus Belief or Believing, and you know, I believe. You've seen it, Mark. I haven't. You see what I'm saying? And
I do.
so,
I do. I use that paraphrase frequently. There is a huge difference. Yes.
Yes, and so, but I've discovered that whatever the government poo-poos and downgrades or tries to distort, that there's probably something behind it. And I look at these images, that you have filmed, and it's pretty wild, man. Either you're a really good mask maker and artist and do some pretty good animation, or this is real. So I'm on the pedestal. My pedestal is with it's I believe especially after talking to Dustin, and his passion and all that, and your work, your video work, and MK Davis's work, the breaking down of the video, and there's something here. Okay, yeah, you could hoax a lot of stuff and all that kind of stuff, but there's something here. And you also look at Agenda 21, and this country, they try to convince you and I, Mark, that it's overpopulated, the world's overpopulated. But most of us live in densely populated areas. But that doesn't represent the majority of even the United States of America. I know it's hard for people to believe, but the vast majority of the United States is actually open lands, ranges. And so here you got one place in particular, your neck of the woods. We got these swamps and bayous, and when you were a kid, I'm sure we both have witnessed development just in our own areas, and the encroachment of development. But at the same token, there's still areas where you and I both are fishermen. I love fishing. You fish for the big bass down there, and I fish up here for smallmouth and walleye, but and pike and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's something going on here, man. There really is something going on here. So where do I go with this? First thing I'm going to talk about is the Bigfoot Researcher's Journal. Tell us more about that before we get into the personal.
Sure. The Bigfoot Researcher's Journal was crafted in 2010, and it was originally meant to be my personal blog experiences in the field. And it actually was birthed the day after I had my first encounter, and I didn't actually see the individual, but I believe I woke him up. And he screamed at me 3 times and actually mimicked the exact 3 screams that I let out. He was less than 30 feet away from me, which came as a shock, obviously. I didn't see him in the thick bush, and he was on the other side of a huge banyan tree, and he must have been sitting because I heard very clearly after I let these 3 roars out and this is the first time I went in the field. I had literally just left the Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission's main office and was investigating a series of reports that were on the BFRO for this particular area. And they told me that if I was going to be in here investigating, I needed to pull permits, and if it was an official capacity, they were expensive, and they were really trying to dissuade me. And I was like, well, I'm just an amateur researcher, man. You need to lighten up, And I'm not pulling permits. I can come in this park anytime I want, and I can bring a camera and I can shoot because this is general public. It's public land trust. And what are you talking about? Well, I had it out with this game warden, and they were telling me that reports like what you're talking about are not of significant importance to us, and we don't keep records of that kind of thing. And I had gotten that from several different state parks. And so anyway, I was driving along the road, the highway, actually, in western Palm Beach County before I was leaving the area, and I saw 1,000-pound or so, maybe 800 to 1,000-pound tree that had been dragged from a tree line that was 75 to 100 yards away all the way to the fence, and you could see very clearly where it was dragged through this pine prairie, the gouge, and it was tossed on top of this barbed wire fence that was 8 feet. And I, in fact, built that fence in the early 90s with the fence company that I worked for, briefly after I got out of the military. In Palm Beach County, I returned, and then I got a job, building fence, and we built this fence. And these people came to us from the county when we finished building this fence and told us to put the barbed wire facing in. And that's strange request because that's not how it's supposed to work. And we inquired about it, and they said, don't ask any more questions, just put the barbed wire facing in. So they were in the process of setting up these preserves in the early 90s in Palm Beach County, and it was already strange. There were a rash of reports around that time, and now the county's locking down all this land and in these exact areas. So I pulled off where this tree was on the fence, and I looked, and it had been placed there. There was no getting around it. It did not belong there. There was no stump. You could see where it was dragged, and the bark was worn off the top. The fence was smashed down. So I went back, and I was going to try to go in and hike down the water to where the tree was to document it. And all I had was my cell phone with me, but I pulled in anyway, and I ended up having this encounter where I was screamed at, and this individual, all I can say is what yelled at me didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like a giant man. And then it tore off through the bush. I thought it was coming at me, so I tore off the other way, and I was falling, and all this craziness ensued where I couldn't get out, and I was, the bushes were so clustered. But I was in a state of shock. I ran all the way back to the car about, maybe 1,000 yards from where I had parked on the side of the road. And I struggled with what had just happened to me for a few minutes. And I even left my fishing pole back there. I had to go back and get it. I was freaked out. But the first thing that came to my mind was I was being lied to because I had just spoke to these people, and this thing just did this, and this happened, and there was no getting around that. And so I got angry because at that point I knew there's nothing that significant that these people aren't aware of. And that was what happened to me was significant. I didn't even see the individual, but you talk about being the power of the vocal of this man's voice. It went through me and vibrated, you know what I mean? And that was from a good 30 feet away at least, through the bushes. And so, I knew right then. And I said, this is real. I'll be damned. It was, there was no getting around it. So I started planning field expeditions, and the Bigfoot Journal, Researcher's Journal, took shape. And then in about maybe 6 months later, in August of 2012, took my son to Mayaka, and he had a sighting. We played cat and mouse with a gigantic man in the bushes for about an hour. And he was walking, we would walk. All this, it was crazy. It was almost surreal the whole time because you'd think, how can it be this simple? And it really, all it involved was us going off trail. And I noticed the entire time I was there, we were the only ones that were going off trail. There was a couple hundred people hiking in Mayaka, and they were all on the trail. But we found some signs that something big had gone through this particular area, and there was a game trail, and we went off the main trail. 45 minutes later, it walked right out in front of my son, and he was in a state of shock about it because for a good while, he used to make fun of me that this couldn't be real, Dad. I don't even understand why. You think this is like – he used to think it was funny that I was, into researching Bigfoot until he saw it. At which point he immediately said, and this was the really cool part of it, other than him being able to see it, I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to report it. And I said, you want to report it? Okay. So I said, let's go. So we went back to the car, and about 30 minutes after the incident, we were in the game warden's office at the front of Myakka State Park. And he went in and he said, and I was just behind him because I had to lock the car, and he was excited, so he was in front of me. He opened the door, and I came in as the door was shutting, and he was already at the desk. And he said, I need a piece of paper and a pencil. I need to draw something I just saw in your park. And the lady said, as I was walking in, is that thing still in here? And he said, well, I just saw this gigantic, hairy guy. You know what I mean? And she was like, oh, man. So she gave him the pen or the piece of paper and a pencil. And then she said, I should call the biologist and get her over here. And so she went over to this old answering machine, and she, it was one of those with the phone answering machine kind of thing, like the 1980s deal. And she put speed dial. So it was coming through on speakerphone. The biologist picked up. She said, you should get over here. I got 2 guys in the office right now that's seen something that's not supposed to be in here, and they want to talk to you. And on speakerphone, the biologist says, tell him it was a bear. And I looked at Christopher, and Christopher looked at me, and I was like, man. And then she said, well, you're on speakerphone, and I think you should get over here. And the phone clicked, and 5 minutes later, we were being harassed by her. Who are you? How long are you going to be in the park? She didn't even ask to see his drawing. She never even asked. And all she said was, where'd you see it? That's what she said. And then when I said, you're studying this thing, aren't you? Because she didn't ask what it was. She knew what it was. And so that really stepped up my game. You know what I mean? After that, then she turned it on.
Well, when you asked her that question, how did she respond? Did she say anything, or did she just walk away?
She was taken back and didn't say a word. And then she immediately turned the entire inquisition onto me instantly. Well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm Mark Zackey. You know, she's like, well, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm looking for this. And you got hominid tracks all over the main trail, and we turned right and walked 500 yards into the bushes, and this shit happens. What's going on in your park? You're studying it. I know you're studying it. Just your entire attitude. And she's like, what's your address? And starts asking me all these questions, you know. How long are you going to be here? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't have to answer your questions, man. You got my information on my card when I checked in, and that's all you're getting. And she said, then we're done talking. She turned around and walked off. And some maintenance personnel pulled up, and they were very excited. I know there's something going on at that point. You know what I mean? And just the general attitude of the park ranger at the front desk was, you know.
Did everybody seem like they were really worked up? You said they were all excited. I mean, what was?
They were all worked up, man. The maintenance personnel. She was worked up because I went at her, and that's
in a fearful way, or were they
No. They were very excited, and he asked where, and I described the place, and the only reason that I could tell or describe anything different, because the entire place looks exactly like everywhere you go in the place. It's just jungle. It looks like freaking Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. And you know, I mean, that's what it looks like. It looks like you're in South America 100,000 years ago. And I said, you know, well, I'll tell you what, I don't know exactly where, but it was about 1,000 yards from where we're standing, and it was that direction, and there was an orange plot that looked like there had been a bunch of mulch there. And the guy that was on the stump grinder jumped in and said, I was just over there 3 days ago, and I ground those stumps up. Did you see that? And I said, yeah. Well, he was just east of that, and he walked from the swamp across right in front of my son in between 2 palm trees, and he got a 4 to 6 second look at him, and he's like, man, I was just over there. Like, they were all excited, like, you know, they missed it kind of thing, you know. But I found that the reaction from what I got, you know, I was an investigative interviewer to begin with. You know what I mean? I'd been doing it. Crypto reality was around already. I'd already worked with on a couple different investigations that eventually got made into Monster Quest episodes, and I had dealings with, you know, investigative, you know, crypto kind of cases. And so I was more interested in her general candor and attitude, or lack of candor would be a better way to put it. But her attitude was, she was extremely uncomfortable when I started to, ask her very direct questions. And she's a very common tactic. She spun the argument, and that's exactly what I'm trained to do. You know what I mean? And I recognized that right off the bat. So I knew right then, I said, man, these people are studying this. So I started a campaign of harassment on Florida state parks and began to try to dismantle the cover-up. And I went at these people. You name it, I did it. I was trying everything I could to get these people to talk to me. And I got one park director in the Big Cypress Preserve to actually admit to me that they had a researcher on staff and that this was all being handled, is exactly the way he put it. And that I needed to not worry about these things. And I was like, well, listen, pal, I'm not worried about it. I need to know, because I'm getting ready to write a huge article on this and it's going to go out. And he's like, well, you can say whatever you want. I'll deny it all. And that's exactly the attitude that the guy had. It was the director of Big Cypress Preserve, and you can quote me on that. Director of operations.
Interesting.
So, yeah, man. And what I found is that you can beat around the bush with these people, but for one reason or another, most of the time, the direct approach, and you actually get some results. You'll get a few answers, And, it is what it is. That was the beginning of the Bigfoot Researchers Journal. And then, I started to develop the theories that I had over the years from interviewing eyewitnesses and studying the eyewitness catalog that was available online. And where was my best chance going to be to find a group of these guys to study? Because if we're going to ever document, what's going on here, you got to be out there, So that was how it all started. And now we're 2 years in the filming process. There was a good 4 years of 3.5 to 4 years of research and development on where, when, how, and all this. And now we're 2 years in and over 100 research films under our belt, most of which show what you've already seen.
Cool. A couple questions that actually do relate to the conversation. One is, what did you do in the military? You mind me asking that? Because a lot of people are going to ask the question, so you might as well deal with it now. What did you do in the military?
I did. I dug holes and I watched people and situations. I'll say it that way.
You watched people in situations.
Yeah, that's what I did. And then I reported what I saw. That's
You're like an intelligence type of thing?
No. I was in the field.
Okay.
Yeah.
My big brother was Green Beret and all that. He has his own dojo in California to train Shamrock and these Stream Fighters and all that. Just wonder what you're doing. Basically, you can't say. Is that what you're saying? You can't say exactly?
No, I was a ranger.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. I just, there's no love lost between me and the U.S. government. I'll just put it that way.
Well, people are going to ask the question, so you might as well deal with it. And the other thing is, and let people decide for themselves, but at least shoot straight about it. One way or the other, let people decide for themselves. What was the other question? Oh gosh, I got so many questions. Oh yeah, so you had dealings with what we know as mainstream media, and somehow, some way, I had that conversation with M.K. Davis, because one thing that's clear to me is that we're the only country, the only people in the whole world, the only country that believes that we've been propagandized to believe that we've never been propagandized. And so most people think that when they're watching television, they're actually watching the reality. And unfortunately, we stare at a box, we live in a box, we go to work in a box, we work in a box, go to church in a box, go to school in a box. We're all boxed up. And
that's
so,
for sure.
for a lot of people who finally realize that mainstream media, what it is and what it's really about, you're not going to find, at best, you're going to find half truths. And that's just the way it is. That's how the oligarchy, the ruling elite, maintain control and power. They're not going to tell you the truth about anything. They're not going to educate you without you being indebted. So, what was your experience dealing with the mainstream media?
I don't deal with the mainstream media, and I don't specifically because I understand what you understand and what you just laid out. I think that the only way to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish is through the American people, and that's the way I see it. Where I see departmentalization in the organizations that are concerned with running these wilderness areas, I don't see it as departmentalization, even though that's technically what it is. What I see are good old Americans who work for a living, who don't know any better as of yet, and don't know how to handle situations from fear of repercussions and so on. And I think that that's where a lot of the programming and the stuff that you had just talked about, where from the time we're born, we're shown what happens to people who stand up against certain organizations. We learn subconsciously, but that's not necessarily true. And I think that where the media is concerned, they're more of a watchdog where my subject matter is concerned. And so I deal with the people. And I build my own information transferring platform. CryptoReality.us is there for one reason, and that's to keep the information free of the bullshit. And I consider that to be job one. When someone comes to our website, we don't allow any kind of interference with what goes on the outside. You have a free, clean environment with which to view the information. And you can go look at YouTube for all of the nonsense. At the end of the day, we put way too much work in. And I get recommendations and suggestions, and people have tried to contact this organization and that news organizations all over the country. But we refuse to allow the information and the truth, more importantly, to be perverted by these institutions that have repetitively demonstrated that that's the primary goal. They're simply complicit in an agenda to keep the American people in ignorance about the subject that I deal with, and many other subjects, obviously. But I believe that the existence of archaic human primates, the fact that they are still thriving, the things that archaeology has been digging out of the ground, there's at least one species that was meant to survive. I've seen it. Thousands of other people have seen it. We have it on film. We have its DNA. Well, there it is. And when you look at what goes on, the mainstream media and the way that they've laid the subject out over the years, invariably you see the introduction of an argument. There's another side to this. Well, I'm sorry, but I was alone when I saw what I saw, and there's no arguing it. I know what I saw, and I'll go to blows with somebody over what I saw. And that's how serious it is. But the American people, because of the way the media has handled the subject, they don't see it as that serious. I always say this: what could be more relevant to being human on planet Earth than there actually being another race of human-type beings on planet Earth? That is of significant importance to the human race. And the human race absolutely has no idea. And so in dealing with the media, I choose not to. I don't want to participate in that. I think the subject needs to be laid out completely different. And we're firm believers that the only way to get this moving is to introduce a more serious dialogue on the subject with mainstream science, in particular, the biological sciences. I have a meeting on Friday with a biologist here in Palm Beach County to introduce him to our data. It will be the first attempt, I'll put it that way. And I look at it like, this is a 15-round battle. This is not, one round and it is what it is. It's going to be a battle. But it's our objective to get, as many people as we can on our side so that we, the people, can introduce a scientific study on the Bigfoot species, not Dr. So-and-so or me. It's we, the people, want to confront the National Academy of Sciences for a fair, transparent peer review of this data and any other data that anyone would like to submit. We're not quite there yet, Mike, but step one is, completed thoroughly. I can tell you that. We have terabytes of data.
Well, the problem here is just like everything else, the way that they've created masterfully, especially in the part of the world that we live in, is that the closer, if you're not in the group, if you're not part of the club, as George Carlson said, if you're not part of the club, there's a big club and you're not part of it. If you're not part of that, and if you're not willing to compromise and you're not willing to pull the line, just like an Orwellian nightmare of 1984, you're going to be isolated and ostracized, and that's exactly how they want it. It's going to be a few of us that start to wake up to the reality. As long as it's just a few, they could care less. So right now we're no threat to anything, but we still have to. It's man's privilege and honor to pursue the truth, and one should do that. If one has any sense of integrity, one should pursue the truth above all things. And so, yeah, we got to talk about these things. We always have to be willing to, let's be honest about stuff. And why is there such confusion? This is deliberate, and we can say it's because it's financial reasons, and certainly that can be a big part of it. But they lie up to us about a lot of things. And what I've discovered, Mark, is you need to start from the very top, cosmology, and work your way down. And you're going to find out that they lie to us about everything. There's a religion out there called scientism. And these guys with their PhDs. I mean, I know people. My son's grandmother has 2 PhDs and went to Wesley College. And she's a feminist Nazi. and that's what she is, I mean, I still let her spend time with her grandson, but it's like, gosh, it's a big mess. I had no idea how brainwashed I was until I started waking up a few years ago.
Yeah, I went through that myself, Mike.
Yeah, and so we do have to look at the whole thing, and so now here I am. I'm looking at the story of Bigfoot, which I don't even know if it should be the right. Maybe we should demand a different name at this point. I mean, I'm looking at this pictures, okay, of the photos you've taken, and then I'm looking. Have you ever looked at these almanac? Let's see. What do they call that? The Olmec heads, the giant sculptures in South America, the giant heads.
Yes, I have. You talking about Easter Island?
No, I'm talking about the Olmec heads.
Oh, no, I must have missed that one.
Write this down, if you will, if you've got a pen and paper, and check this out.
Sure, go ahead.
Could be a dead-end lead. I don't think so. OLMEC, head. They say it's circa 1,600 BC. Giant stone carvings of heads. They look an awful lot alike.
What's in our images?
Yeah, it's in your images. Describe the heads for us, will you?
Well, what we see is, obviously, and they're not hatched from giant 8-foot eggs, so they are born, and there are a bunch of them.
My birds just laughed at that joke.
I actually heard the birds. That's interesting. But yeah, they're an archaic human primate. What does that mean? They belong in the family Hominidae. They're not gorillas, very clearly. They have hooded noses. That's different than the lesser human primates. A hooded nose means they can submerge. Where primates have open, the lesser human primates, chimpanzees and gorillas have, not that they can't go in the water, because I'm sure it happens, but the hooded nose traps air. That's why you can submerge. There's a bubble in there. It prevents water from going. The nasal passage is different. And aside from that, the lesser human primates in the family Hominae, and this is convenient for evolutionary science, they lumped us all in the family Hominae. Yeah, they have a divergent toe on the feet, so it's almost like a hand where the foot's at. It has that divergent toe. It looks like basically they can jump up into a tree and grab it, and as you know, they're 5 to 8 times stronger than human beings. They can pull themselves up and grab that same branch that they have with their hand and wrap their divergent toe around it, just like their hand has it. And they can let go with their hands and hang from the tree. Gorillas and chimps have that. Sasquatch does not have that. So they're further along from an evolutionary point of view than the lesser human primates, and they're more in tune with the hominoids or the pre-humans, the Australopithecus. There's a bunch of them, man. The bottom line is cavemen is what they fit with. And so when we see these faces in our films or in the field, and I'm a multiple eyewitness at this point, I've had 8 different times eyeball to eyeball. And in the last 2 years, 7 of those in the field researching.
Pretty badass. That's pretty badass.
It will freak you out every time, no matter how many times it happens. Trust me, man. And even the little ones. And 3 of them were little ones, less than 5 feet tall, 4.5 feet tall, somewhere in there. But they have the same confidence that the larger ones have. It's just very obvious. When they stare at you, it's unnerving. So if you happen to notice them, it's very difficult to notice them. But their faces are archaic in bone structure. And what that is they're very robust bone structure in their faces. Their cheekbones are very exaggerated. They have very deep set eye sockets. If you want to look at a really close skull to what we see in the field, look up the Dmancy skull. It was found in Georgian Russia. The Dmancy skull is the closest thing that I've ever seen to the bone structure of what we catch on film on a regular basis in our research area. That's the Dmancy skull in Georgian Russia. That bone structure, I would say, is the exact thing that we're studying. And it really is something to see these guys. Some of them have human hair. That's an interesting aspect of the genetics of the species. They don't all look alike. What I say about them not having much in common with the lesser human primates, the gorillas and the chimps, that is, in the family Homini, and more in common with hominoids, prehumans, and modern humans, why I say that primarily is the soft tissue variants in their actual face. These guys look different from each other. You can take the average gorilla and you take 50 of them, and for the most part, most of those gorillas are going to look pretty similar. Chimpanzees, the same thing. You'll get variations, and I don't mean to offend any chimp gorilla lovers out there, but the bottom line is a gorilla's a gorilla, a chimp's a chimp, and they pretty much look the same. These guys are like us. Like I don't look like you, Mike, and you don't look like me. Very drastic differences. That's the Sasquatch race. And that's the best way to put it, because they are a race of human primates, and they belong in the family Hominae, somewhere in between modern humans and the pre-humans or hominoids. I hope that answers your question.
Sure. I just sent you also a website talking about the Olmec.
I see this Africans thing too.
Yeah.
It did a trip how history is just, it's unbelievable. I was just telling you earlier about Agenda Earth, and Dr. William Lester and I have that show, and it's a history show. But we go back and straighten it out from the point of view of actual physical evidence. So when we cover, say, ancient Mesopotamia, we give you the story as it's written in stone, and so on. And so history's a big thing with me, man, and I love this. I've actually seen this link before that you just shot me. Okay. The Naraland. It's just such an interest. It's a fascinating part of history that doesn't get pressed.
Right. Well, and here's the other thing, too. If you look at that, is this the one of the Africa one, or is this the Africans?
Yeah, you sent me the Africans discovered America thousands of years ago.
Okay. But I'm really interested in the head because you find those same heads in South America and Central America. The big freaking heads that only something like these beings could do that you're talking about. I'm not saying.
Well, they have. I think here too. One of the correlations that we find in the areas that we invariably find these guys occupy is the mounds. We have Florida was occupied for archaeologists date it back to about 12,000 years. The state of Florida, human occupation, modern human occupation, put it that way, and 6,000 years in Palm Beach County. But we have the largest mound cities south of Appalachia here in South Florida, and in a correlation to that, where the Bigfoot activity is concerned, it overlaps, absolutely overlaps. And I've often questioned who the mound builders were, since archaeology down here refuses to show any bones. The mounds in the Appalachian chain in the Ohio Valley, they've been known to pull giant skeletons, according to the people that dug them up. Of course, that's all been refuted by science, who wasn't there, but the eyewitnesses will actually say these were giant skulls. And, I absolutely refuse to believe that even an average man can't tell the difference between a human skull and a mastodon skull, So you never know. You never know where this Bigfoot thing is concerned. With it's interesting because archaeology calls the mound builders of South Florida the archaic ones. That's what they call them. But they refuse to actually show any of what they've dug out of these mounds. And I think that that's a tell in and of itself, Is it the Sasquatch species? I don't know.
Well, that's the next question I was going to ask, because it looks to me like what you got going on down there is not what's going on up here and what's going on out west. You got a different thing going on. You got a different entity, animal, man.
It could be. I think, in conversations with a geneticist that actually has sequenced their DNA, I was told that there's a hierarchy within the Sasquatch genome, according to their studies and their data. And essentially, the older representations of the genes that they've sequenced come from the Pacific Northwest, Canada, and the northern regions of the U.S. Not necessarily isolated in the Pacific Northwest, but all across from east to west. Appalachia, we're talking from Vancouver in the area of Canada on the west coast to what is that? Ontario over here on the east coast. And then the further south you got, when she sequenced genomes from samples that were sent to her, the more degraded the DNA appeared to be. That is, that it appeared that there was more inbreeding, and that the more pristine genetic material was coming from those in the north. So you could be right, but I don't necessarily think that it's a different race. I think it's all the Sasquatch race, Mike. But I also think that through its migratory travel southward here in the U.S. as they move south, maybe the groups were limited and some inbreeding went on, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Because we do see some interesting things in our films at times. I mean, there's a few of these guys that I don't know if they're cut off from other groups, but it appears that there's some genetic aberration. Really bad stuff, like mitosis hasn't completed kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Stuff that you would say belongs in a horror movie.
Yeah, can you expand upon that?
We caught. I caught one on film repeatedly over the course of about 8 months that appeared to the cell appeared to not have split, and I had to actually start looking up stuff online to figure out what I was looking at in this film. It appeared that genetically, it was an aberration, man. It was defective. It's it appeared to have two faces, and it looked like something out of a John Carpenter movie called The Thing, is the closest description I can give you. And it was terrifying because we were researching in this area and they were regularly approaching us. And this is one of the individuals that I caught on film. I have not seen that individual in one of our research films in about 6 months, but we've slowed down from that actual time period. Actually, it was right around that time that we decided, wait a second, let's take a long look at what's going on here and really evaluate this. I showed these images to Dr. Lester, and we both agree that, there's a good chance that this particular group's genetic pool is shallowing. I'll just put it that way.
Now, when you say 2 heads, is there like a
I don't
small...
mean 2 heads. I'm saying this thing had the exact Sasquatch shape, but it appears in the footage that we've seen and that we use for our research to get better footage, that this thing actually it looked like a Siamese twin that hadn't split all the way. I'll just put it that way. Yeah, that's the best description I can give you. It looked like a Siamese twin at the head, but it hadn't split like at all. It just, it started to or something. I don't know, man. The way Dr. Lester described it to me was that mitosis was interrupted. It didn't split the way it was supposed to.
Because there's an image, at least from what I can see. Of course, my eyes could fool me, of a being that kind of looks like there's 2 heads. There's one that's more predominant than the other one.
Is it one of ours?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean
I've got them. I mean, I try to believe it. I look at those and I say, if I cannot repetitively document this individual with at least a fair amount of clarity, I generally don't share it. We're using the word clarity loosely here. Understood. You know what I mean? But we look at, what we try to do is employ a standard, and that particular individual, I have caught him on film. I believe it's a he, on multiple occasions, and at no point was it ever to the clarity that I would actually show anybody. So if you got it, it was in something that was inadvertent.
It could just be, just the problem with these heads that are their heads in the bush kind of thing. It's I can clearly see a head. And then, but then my mind.
Are you on Facebook? Is that where you're looking, or what? What do you got?
I'm looking at the crypto reality, the video. I think it's.
Oh, YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube.
Oh, it's one of our commercials. Okay.
Oh, it's a. Well, something happened with Skype.
Hey, what's going on there, Mike?
Hey, Skype. First time I had this problem. I know those people say they have problems. I haven't had this problem in quite a while.
I don't normally
Usually,
have this problem either.
and it just dropped. It dropped you and myself. I had to call back into the show. So yeah, so we were talking about the big brow, the big nose, the big lips, and that it's big head and very human looking. It's very, this is my opinion at this point after the many hours of research, whether it's especially when we talk about evolution and its weak foundation, cosmology, the Big Bang, everything. That we're on our own here. The average layman is on his own to figure out what the hell's going on.
That's right.
And I've come to be a believer in these cryptoids. I just don't like the Bigfoot thing. I don't know what else to call them, but
Neither do I. And we coined a term we call them bush Indians. And the reason we call them that is because they are human primates. They are hominoids. They're not lesser human primates, or we'd see the divergent toe. We don't see that. The tracks do not look like apes' tracks, gorillas' tracks, that is, or chimps. So we call them bush Indians. And there's not a tribe in the United States or Canada, for that matter, that won't tell you that these guys were here when their people arrived. So what you're staring at in our still frames, and they are still frames. I don't take photos. Those are all from film. And there's thousands of frames of these guys. It's not, one image and that's all. You can see them moving, blinking, all this. But what you're staring at is essentially an indigenous or aboriginal species of human primate here on this continent. And the reason I say that is they exist and they're not on reservations. So they sat in those bushes and watched the modern Native American humans, the modern humans, as they were decimated by the Europeans. These guys are the last autonomous race of human primates on planet Earth. They are not governed by anyone. And in my opinion, they are aboriginal. They are the indigenous human primates of this planet. I don't view, based on what we see in the field, the level that they are adapted to the environment, they are symbiotic in their relationship to the environments. They change the environment very little, and they belong there. There's no other conclusion you can come to with long-term study around these guys. They're as comfortable in the thickest, nastiest, most disgusting bush, and that's a human perspective. You can hear it in what I say. That's my perspective of those environments. That is not an evolved, adapted perspective. They are the original human primates of this planet. And that's why they're still here, you see. You see these other ones that failed to continue, the Neanderthals, the Australopithecus, all these other ones, I can't speak to why they went extinct. I just know that these guys obviously belong here, or we wouldn't have the data we have. I'd have never saw what I saw. We wouldn't be having these conversations, Mike.
Right. Yeah.
And those are my conclusions. If I can offer any information, that would be for what they are and who they are. That's who they are, in my opinion, and I believe we have enough data to back that statement up.
Well, that's some pretty amazing photos you got. And when do you plan on having the video out?
Well, we're beginning the second half of the shoot in about 9 days, and it's going to take about 2 weeks, and then probably a month or two in the editing room with the interviews and the field stuff that we're doing to edit it all down and get it ready for public release. So I would say you can expect the release on Amazon early June, somewhere around there. April, May, yeah, probably the beginning of June and it's just the first film in a series of films about what's going on. And the primary focus of the film, the film itself is called Bigfoot, A Hidden Reality. And the focus of the film is actually on a lot of the type of stuff, subject matter we've been discussing. Why is this going on and it's not being dealt with? And so it really is right up your alley, so to speak. With the type of information that you like to cover. And I believe that I'm a firm believer. I'm still naive a bit. I believe when the American people find out that there is something going on that needs to be handled, they will step up. And why I say the American people are blissfully unaware of the importance of this is that they don't understand that this is a humanitarian issue. This is absolutely a humanitarian issue. We're dealing with something that belongs in the family hominae. It's that simple. There's no correlation whatsoever to the lesser human primates where Sasquatch is concerned. And when you can take that from any eyewitness who gets a good look. And I view this, like I said, we view this as a humanitarian issue because if this subject was laid out the way eyewitnesses truly see what they see, and there was no argument introduced or the spin wasn't put on it, the way that they spin it, it's just not important. If it is real, it's just an escaped monkey or it's an ape, and then they show pictures of gorillas. If they actually put it the way the eyewitnesses in the gravity of what they saw was put to the American public, we would already have a shitstorm of epic proportions, Mike. But we don't, and that's because a lot of what we talked about tonight has bearing in this subject as well. And it's our goal to reintroduce the truth to the general public by way of these public releases and garner enough support to where we can begin to confront mainstream science, like I said, to reintroduce and really introduce a more serious dialogue on the subject. You have to have data. That's the bottom line. I was contacted by a federal biologist about 5 months ago, and the guy said, I'd never seen anything like this. This is the amount of data that you have is unparalleled. And I said, well, this is what we're planning on doing. And he said, well, you need to get the biologists on board with you. If you get the biologists on board, the rest of science will follow. They'll have no choice. Well, Friday's our first meeting, so we'll see.
That'd be awesome, man. Friday.
We'll see.
I hope it works out for you. I mean, it makes you wonder how many other groups of humans, just in the past 500 years, basically since the colonization, Western European colonization, have been extinguished and wiped out. The numbers, as far as we were told, that there was less than 10 million humans that lived in North America when the first white settlers showed up. Well, it's turning out now that's more like 50 million.
There's definitely not 50 million now.
No,
right?
And they could say, well, it's all just happenstance. It was based on, germs and disease, but
we know the truth. We know the truth.
Yeah, they wiped out a bunch of them, and a lot of us actually. I mean, I have a bunch of Cherokee and Ojibwe Indian blood in me, and my grandma on my dad's side and my father, they look like Indians. That's for sure. And
yeah, my whole family's from Robeson County, North Carolina, and they're Lumbee, from the Lumbee tribe.
Yeah. That's my father, my grandfather, and he came up from that same area. So there was, and there was his father. There was, it was worse being a Native American or even having Native American blood in you than it was being a black person 100 years ago.
Oh man, I mean, picture this. Try to. I'll lay this out. Imagine how the American Indians feel, and they're actually recognized. Now, try to understand that there's an entire race that hasn't even been recognized as being real. Think about that. If they do what they do, and they have, and we all know it, to the Native American tribes, in the name of progress and the American dream, imagine what's going on with these guys when no one even knows they're real. Just think about that. And I can tell you, I've seen things out there. There's a lot of stuff going on that no one knows about. And
All right.
you know, I mean,
well, I got a question for you that maybe you could help me and my audience.
Sure.
Now, for my research, and I'm trying to do my best to juggle, 100 different topics at once. And so I think I'm doing pretty good by narrowing it down to a couple guys that I wanted to talk to, one being you. I like M.K. Davis' work. What other gentlemen or folks would you recommend folks following or trying to get in contact with or supporting besides yourself? Because this is how I see it. There's people out there that are just capitalizing on this, making shows and all that kind of thing. And I sure hope Dustin doesn't become one of those. I talked to him and I said, please follow the truth, don't follow the money. So he started his new thing. So, but and guys like Dustin, the fresh blood, new generation of folks, please don't follow the money, follow the truth. But who do you know that you feel confident in? And I know this is kind of a tough one to think, because you probably know a lot of folks, but there's got to be at least a handful of folks that you know for certain that aren't being sensational about it or trying to capitalize too much on it. Who would you recommend?
Well, it's a curious thing about me. I wouldn't presume to recommend someone. What I say is this. Pursue the truth at all costs on your own and make up your own mind. I look at where the Bigfoot subject is concerned, and it really is just so twisted out of proportion on the internet that when I began to research in the field, the truth, I was resistant to what I was actually witnessing, experiencing, and what was happening to me. And that's the extent that this has been blown out of proportion, twisted, and that what the quote-unquote experts have laid out for the general public, they are way off. The truth has always been, for me, something that I have to experience myself, because I am no exception to the programming. I found that when I started to go into the field and when I really started to look into the subject, first of all, that it had a profound effect on me, and that I absorbed a lot of information that subsequently, when I went into the field and researched myself and began to see evidence and began to experience what truly was out there, that information was largely inaccurate. It was terministically screened, and I began to see the agenda behind it. So I always say the same thing. Don't take my word for it. Get off your ass and do it yourself. Start to look into these things. Motivate yourself for the truth, because it's there. You just have to sift through a lot of stuff, and then you'll begin to see. There are good people out there. They're few and far between. I can tell you that, and that's one of the reasons why I refuse to point people in anybody's direction. I say seek the truth, because that's if you focus on that, and man, there's few and far between people who are actually willing to go into the field, and so most people are going to be limited there. I look at like a lot of information that's out there, and where I go is to the data. It's one thing to listen to someone. I always say the same thing: show me. And if they can't, then I know it's opinion. There has to be something to back up what you're saying. That's how you know. And so if you do look up people, look for the truth in their work, and it'll be real obvious, because the truth of this subject hits you like a stone in the head. You will be traumatized when you see the truth of this, and it will affect you to your core, and you will know that now you know. So,
well, that's interesting. Tell me about what it was like psychologically and physically and spiritually, the whole package, I guess.
Okay.
The first time you saw one of these things, because
Okay.
what I hear over and over again, like Dustin and others, is that they become a wreck when they first see this stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
you finally realize that the District of Columbia, Washington D.C. is a city-state. It's along with London and the Vatican City. The line
It's a shock.
Yeah.
Well, I got time for one more, and then I got to get to the studio. But and what I can tell you is this, Mike. There's watching television and seeing it, and I believe the Patterson footage is what it represents. I think it's real, and in discussions with several different anthropologists that actually know what they're looking at, it's real. That I'll say that. So, but there's a very big difference between that and being somewhere that you really don't feel comfortable anyway, and then having something like that come strolling out or jump out onto the trail in front of you and then eyeball you. For me, it was, I don't believe this is happening, and I didn't. And then it started to sink in immediately that it was happening, because after he landed from the jump, he pulled the palm fronds down and it turned his whole upper torso. And he looked right at me, and we stared at each other for a second or two. And that's when everything, my blood ran cold, my entire world changed. And spiritually, it drained me of every ounce of respect that I had for probably everything that I'd ever learned about the natural world, for science. It was a spiritual drain. It forced me to question everything, Mike, everything. Because if this is out there, and it is, and this is real, then what else is out there and what's real? And in my mind, the way it works, it's very logical, and it takes things one logical step at a time, and it starts to work things out. I got things going through my head for 3 months after I saw that thing, and I couldn't sleep, and it affected everything. And now I'm here with you, and I have my own team. I have a great partner in Melanie, and I have a new team member now, Carrie. All three of us are eyewitnesses. We have serious goals to try to help mankind wake up to what's going on with this. And so if you want to know how ultimately it affected me, it changed everything and set me on a course that I will not back down from until this is what it needs to be, or I'm dead. One way or another, it's getting done. And that's how profound it was. Do I still eat every day? Yes. Do I still struggle with regular life? Absolutely. Do I still have relationships with my family? Yeah. At times strained because of what I do. Do I still, hang out with my friends? I have a band. I do all kinds of interesting things. Yes. But I'm a cryptozoologist. And right now my focus is Bigfoot. And it'll stay that way until I get this done. So that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, hey, man, thanks for spending an hour and 20-some minutes with me. So good luck with your recording, man, and shred it up and have a great time doing it, man.
Yeah, listen, Mike, man, I appreciate you having me on. And like I said, man, sorry about before. Anytime, man. Just give me a call, let me know. And if you want to have me on again, and that sounds good.
Let's talk about what you experienced this Friday and what's going on with the video, stuff like that.
That sounds good. I'll also hook you up with a membership on my site so you can see what else is going on.
Awesome, man. Appreciate that.
CryptoReality.us, man. Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right, man.
All
Take care and rock on, man.
You too, man.
All right. That's Mark Zackey, folks. And once again, let's see what we can do here. So many questions. so many things to ask. But crypto reality, you can find he's got like 40 videos, but I think you don't really need any more than those 4 videos. Just open up your eyes. It's on YouTube, the YouTube channel. Then there's cryptoreality.us, and that's his website. And if you feel like supporting them, support them, man. And support people like Mark, that are trying to figure it all out. Join him on his Facebook page. Just Mark Zackey, and that's Zaskey. And yeah, man, cool. I wish I had more time. Wish he had more time. There's a lot of questions I have, but there's only so much you can say about this stuff, really. At the end of the day, either it's real or it's not. Either it's the truth, or it's either you know it or it's a belief. And I want us to know it. I want us to I love mysteries in our lives, so and let's see what's going on here. Mark, you sent me something. Thanks for having me, Mike. No problem, Mark. No problem, brother. So yeah, Saturday got fakeologist.com, and I have my son. I'd get him in 40 minutes anyway. So yeah, what do you do? Yay, nay? What do you think? The research I'm seeing. Well, first of all, my big brother says he swears he saw it in Northern California. I call him a liar about. So I think he's lying about this. I don't know. I don't believe so. There's thousands, if not millions, of people who have seen the man with the woods, bush Indians. I like the bush Indian, and yeah. What do you say, man? I don't know what to say. It's one of those things. There's really some, if you're going to try to profiteer off this subject, those that do, they're going to endlessly go over the same old ground. So, what I'm hoping is a guy like Mark will get enough evidence to support the reality. But then again, these bush Indians, would they be better, or are they better off not being recognized, or would they be better off being recognized? We live in a government we live under rulership of the oligarchy, and the way they use Roman law to break every treaty that ever was, that they ever made, they broke. There's never been a treaty they ever kept. The closest thing to anything in keeping of a treaty so far seems to be the Antarctic Treaty. Even if that's real, who knows? And I'm tired, and I need to get my son. So, anyways, this is a last minute type of thing, but cool. I'm glad it happened, and I'm glad that it wasn't. I'm glad Mark wasn't blowing me off. So that's good stuff. Anyways, take care.
Now hiring bookworms like Courtney, a crew member at the Batesville McDonald's.
McDonald's is great to college students because they actually offer tuition assistance. They've basically paid for what student loans couldn't cover.
We're hiring people like Courtney who are passionate about what they do. Our benefits include tuition assistance, flexible hours, paid time off, free employee meals, and more. At McDonald's, the crew is the special sauce. Join us. Apply now at mcdonaldshiresohio.com. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
You're going to try. Go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you are going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.